as we get ready for a trip to Phoenix. Really, the concept is turned more to a docu-series because of the nature of people with disabilities and the people I've associated with and our Rocksteady Boxing and other things that I've kind of been involved in. I found that there's a lot of people out there with great stories to tell, and I know the idea initiated with the opportunity to take my daughter to Phoenix and let her ride in a self-driving car, and maybe go to the museum of instrument museum and or musical instrument museum and see some things there, and also other museums. So we've had a pretty kind of changing of thoughts. One thing came about, and it happened when I was going down to my visit with my neurologist in Little Rock at UMS, and I asked a lady in her boxing class to ride along so she could see what I was doing in some of my trials. And she had a background that was interesting because she'd been a teacher in Maine and been a second grade teacher, and so she had a lot of experience there. And then she'd also taught, I believe, in Florida, and her husband had been a PGA club pro, and her son's a club pro in Florida. And if you watched the PGA golf tournament this year, you saw a club pro get a hole in one, get a lot of attention there. So there's a lot of things that those people have in their life and enjoy, but they move around a lot, and there's a lot of issues that they face. And she, when her husband had a stroke, and she moved back to Arkansas to be closer to family, she took in Rocksteady Boxing, but she has so many charities you wouldn't believe. She has been on the board of a children's hospital in Little Rock for 6 years or so, and she does so many things with church groups. Just always doing something very involved. But on our conversation down there, I found that she's doing. She's successfully published a children's book, but she is currently working on one to be released soon. It has to do with kids working with people with disabilities, and what do you do when your child or some other child are playing together, doing things together, and how do they handle their communications with people with special needs. So that became part of our discussion, and after we got down here, and I kind of joked that was on our way to Little Rock, and this was an epiphany when I got to Damascus, so that when I thought about this more and how to broaden the concept and then talk to others, I wanted to make sure everybody kind of understood that it wasn't going to be a self-focused thing. And as you see, as you hear interviews with people, there may be special areas and places they're interested in going. They've got a fascinating background. I don't think you could hardly imagine it. We have a lady, a retired Navy nurse that was on both the hospital ships in the Middle East. She probably has some things in common with Alan Alda, who was in MASH, and you know what was real and what's or what's real and what was I guess for the TV and movie. Or you got other people like I guess the person that's writing the book. It would be great for her to go to the children at St. Jude's, or even go to New York and go to the Parkinson's group. So there's that group, and then we got a person who's he's been a successful entrepreneur. He's been a manufacturer, and he just recently sold his business, and he has traveled all over, and he still does, and he's really active outdoorsman and a champion snooker player. And I thought, well, maybe with all this antique car enthusiast, he might want to go to Detroit and see the museum up there. And I was thinking about the Henry Ford Museum, and then there's another thing up there now is Pace Industry has their headquarters up there, and this individual was their second employee. So, and here in Harrison, so a lot of things in common. So on our trip, we're going to do a lot of things. We're going to be looking at the Waymo, the self-driving car. I want to see how much comfort my daughter has with that. Again, she has oral facial digital syndrome, but from appearance, people don't recognize the difference with other issues, and one of those is Down syndrome, and they have their separate issues. There's a girl locally that is a great golfist that has Down syndrome and uh, very communicative and a very friendly person. So there's a lot of different skills that different people have, but there's a tendency to see person and just not recognize the differences. So we want to talk about accepting those differences, and that's part of what we're doing here. So you're going to see a lot of things we might use. I'm going to use a little bit of even some things as far back as Alfred Hitchcock. He has some funny openings, and I'm going to use that. I'm going to be using some other things like Ted Lasso. He has some good, some good speeches pregame and halftime, and there might be some other things that we bring in here, and at points it's made, but they'll all be done with humor, and we'll be done in a way that we can talk about them and not be something that's divisive, and we're not going to get into those kind of political or religious or social issues, but we are going to talk about looking at things that maybe people with disabilities or some kind of handicap, or there may be some that have very light handicaps and others very severe. I know I started out just a few years ago, and now I do have a on the back of my driver's license that does label a person with that's disabled or disabilities, and that's for parking purposes. When we go to bigger cities, it's not so much here locally, but when I travel, that's kind of an important thing. So you'll see some things that I do here that are for introduction purposes, and we'll be talking with some people and some things that you can kind of get an idea, what this is going to cover. Now, I've tried to make this point at different times, but this is not anyway, looking for donations. We're not got a $19.99 a month deal or anything like that. In fact, if anything happens on the donation level, it'll probably be something where it's a pass-through once we figure out how we can do it. But we are interested in putting together good sponsors for helping in the content as far as how we move on that and what we do with that from the creative standpoint and putting it together. Like now, I will have a lot of pieces that I'll have together, and trying to put those pieces together and cutting them down and editing and putting them out to a finished product is important. And at that time, I think because of the market, people with disabilities, that's a big market. They're the largest, as far as a group of people that would be called, we may classify a lot of others, whether it's by color or anything else as far as minorities, but the 26% of people in the U.S. and a billion globally, and then the fact that they have $1 billion to spend, and it's disposable, discretionary income or resources that they can put toward real estate, retail. They can put it toward donations and charities, and a lot of other things that you'll come to mind. You'll see the travel or tourist business. All those areas would be good for a sponsor, and if they're, it's one of those things that's not going to be, it's going to be a feel-good. You'll see everything's from the heart, and people that get in front of the camera are maybe not the slickest, but they are the best because it's from the heart. And so that's what you're seeing in this first phase. It's all, self-driven, self-supported, and very minimum people that's made any kind of a contribution. Sometimes we might have a little help on certain things, and we will we'll give them notification. You see right now, I do have the Ford cap. That's good product placement. But when you go to Scottsdale, what you got to put on there, of course, is the Tyler's cap. So PGA people, hey, look at this. We are going to be talking to a golfer that overcomes some handicaps, a person that was born locally here, and this where we're starting from, and we're going to meet with him and talk about things that he's done, what he's accomplished and what he's doing now and what he plans to do. I think he's found his happy place, and we know that another person I'm visiting that I travel all over South America with has found his happy place. And some people might say, Phoenix, man, the temperature's going to be from 110 to 118 highs the next few days. You got to be kidding. So we're going to cover those points too, but we're going to have some fun. We're going to enjoy it, and we're not going to be, we're going to keep ourselves comfortable and not going to put pressure on anybody. And if anybody wants to participate, they can. As I say they say in sports or technology, if somebody doesn't want to do it, I just say next man up, and that's been great. As I've found out in this, is that there's always somebody willing to do, and many times, and maybe most of the time, they got a better story than what we already had.